continuing with the laws concerning finishing up Shacharis. And in the laws of Tefilah today, we're talking about Kedusha and Uval Tzion, okay? Or Kedusha Uval Tzion, meaning we put the Kedusha that we would say in Shemona Esrei into this prayer known as Uval Tzion. And this is the way that we end Shacharis. And we're talking about this as we move into getting ready to discuss the laws of Kriyas Torah, because this touches on this a little bit. So let's start with understanding Uval Tzion on a non-Torah day. So the Shulchan Aruch says, so you finished Tachanun, you said Kaddish, and now the Shulchan Aruch says, you translate the recitation of the sanctification Uval Tzion Goel, okay, one who brings redemption to Zion, and you should be very careful to say it with good intention. The Rama adds, if a single person says it by themselves, the rule is the following. It should be the same rule as we said by the bracha of Yotzer or in Shema. And look at those rules in Siman Nun Tes 59, okay? And the Kedusha that's recited in Aramaic translation, a single person may say it, okay? And not two people together, and it should not be recited out loud. All right, let's explain what's going on over here. So you translate it. So Uval Tzion is a prayer service, and it should be translated so that people should understand it. And it says that it should be recited with proper intention. The Gemara says that at the day when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, then the whole world is held up by what's known as Kedusha de Sidra, by the organized recitation of the sanctification of God. So when something is announced, it should be announced before it started. And so therefore the Shliach Tzibur will start with Ashrei, okay, and not between Ashrei and Lam Natseach, okay? So that's what we're saying, is that people should be getting ready for it, okay, at that point. And how much the more so when the whole congregation together is reciting Ashrei and this organization of the Kedusha, that people should be distracted, okay? So therefore you should try to make the announcement, get ready for this, okay? So the Ramah says that we should look earlier in Siman 55, okay? Oh, 59, excuse me, Siman 59. Why? Because there the Ramah says that the custom is to say the blessings with the Kedusha in it, right, by yourself. Nonetheless, it's better to say it with a congregation, right? At least 10 adult males. And therefore, if the congregation has started to say V'ata Kadosh, which is in the middle of it, this is the line announcing that we're about to recite the Kedusha de Sidra. If they start saying that, and the person has not yet caught up to them to Ashrei, right? He's in the middle of Tachanun or whatever else, or he has said a really long Shemona Esrei, he should say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh with them, and then go back to wherever he is, whether it's an Ashrei or Lamatseach. Okay, and also the two psukim before V'ataka, which is Uval Tzion Goel, Shav Hashem, right? Go back to that, but you should say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh with the tzibur. Okay, and then you should also then go on to continue V'anizos V'risio Sam, which is introducing the second part of Kedusha. And the Kedusha is followed by the Aramaic translation. So the Ramah says, which is to say, the verses themselves of Kedusha that are translated into Aramaic should only be said out loud with the congregation. The rest of the verses that are attached to it in the Kedusha, which are also translated, can be recited at any time, even by yourself, but not out loud. Okay? And therefore, when you say this Kedusha, this organized Kedusha together, it should be recited publicly, and with each individual person reciting the translation privately. Why? Because then that's not considered reciting it with the congregation. And that's why the Ramah says you shouldn't say them out loud. And if you are praying without the congregation, you can then say the Kedusha out loud. Okay? So then it doesn't matter so much. Okay? So And then, but what also means that the congregation was to say the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh out loud. There's some places I've gone where they don't say it out loud. I don't know where the source of their minhag is. Just, you should say the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh out loud. If they're not saying it, then they're just, I don't know why they're against the Shulchan Aruch, but they're against the Shulchan Aruch. You should ask them where that custom comes from. A person may not leave shul until after Kedusha de Sidra. Okay? This is halacha beis, don't leave. Okay? And the Ramah adds, after you finish Kedusha de Sidra, you should then recite the prayer of Aleinu L'Shabeach while standing. And a person should be careful to say it with intention. And when you get to Kel Lo Yoshia, we pause and then say Anachu Korim. Okay? So we make a little pause. Right? So you should pause. Some people just go straight through. Make a little pause. Right? Anachu Korim should have a little pause before it. That's what he's saying. After that, you say what's known as the Kaddish. The Kaddish prayer should be recited by someone who has lost a parent. It's known as Kaddish Yasom. After you complete Aleinu, and even if the Kaddish should be recited while in the shul. It should still be recited in the shul, even if the person who lost a parent is not there. Okay, but it should be recited by somebody who has neither father nor mother, and even someone who has both parents can recite it if his parents aren't particular about it. Okay, and some people have the custom to say after this what's known as pitum hakatores, how to make the mash of the incense. Both in the afternoon and in the morning after prayers are done, and we introduce it with the prayer known as Ein Kelokenu. All right, some people should know that one. Ein Kelokenu, Ein Kananenu. Right, that one. All right, that's usually just do it on Shabbos. We'll get to that in a second. Then after that, you say the song that the Levites used to recite in the temple after Shacharis, and that's the only time you recite it. Now the Ramah brings down there's a custom not to recite Pitum HaKatores, not to recite the incense thing. I'm sorry, to only recite the Pitum HaKatores within something written down, and not to recite it orally, okay? Because the recitation of it is in place of the actual bringing of it, the lighting of the incense, and you might come to skip. And if you skip one of the ingredients, that's no good. Okay, and if you skip one of the spices, then there is actually a punishment from heaven that you should if you lit incense without doing that, and so therefore the custom is to say it during the week. Is to not say it during the week because people are trying to leave to go to work, and we're concerned that they might skip something, and they'll leave shul and forget something. And there's another prayer that you say when you leave shul, which you say Hashem Nacheni, and then you bow a little bit as you walk out. All right, let's go over some of these rules over here. So to leave the basic Knesses. Why? Because we said that's so important to recite the Kedusha de Sidra. The Mishnah explains that you have to be there to say it and not skip out on it. And so therefore, since we say that it's important to recite it with the congregation, you should also be careful to not leave before you recite it. Okay, even if you're going to say them, and it's not a real urgency to leave. Okay, and the words when we say Kedusha de Sidra, that's the Kedusha recited in the middle of Uval Tzion. The Ramah brings down that we recite Aleinu, and the Magen Avraham, quoted here in the Mishnah, says that there was a custom introduced by the Ari that it should be recited after every single one of our prayer services, not just Shacharis. And that is our custom in Ashkenazi countries. Except for places where they have Ma'ariv immediately after Mincha, you should skip it. However, we'll discuss this in more detail when we get to those laws in chapter Siman, Reish Lamed Hey, 235. Aleinu should not be recited after Mincha, because when you recite it after Ma'ariv, that's also going to be included in Mincha. Okay? Now, there are different ways in which people read Aleinu, and they are brought in the Eliyah Rabbah, and you shouldn't change the custom that you are accustomed to reading. Each one of them has an important reason for it. Okay, so read the one that you see in your Siddur that your congregation says. So we say that you shouldn't. So the Berurah brings down to recite the Pita Makatoris with lots of intention, and also recite Aleinu that way. And the Mishnah explains that Aleinu should be recited in great dread and fear, as if you were standing before the entire host of heaven. Okay, and the Holy One, blessedly, he stands there as with the entire heavenly congregation, and everyone says, Ashrei Ha'am Shekach Halo, right? And they all respond that. Okay, so therefore you should take Aleinu more seriously. And so we said we pause at Anach Korim. Okay, now also the Mishnah adds you should also bow as well, so that way you don't look like you are denying, right? So he holds that you should bow. Some people disagree that you don't need to bow, such as the Gra and so on hold that bowing is not necessary. You're just talking about a subject and not required to. He doesn't bring that down. That's me adding that as a super commentary. The mourners who have lost a parent, which is Kaddish Yasom, should be recited after Aleinu all the time. Now the Mishnah explains that the person that there's a congregation, not the person, but the congregation has an obligation to recite Kaddish after reciting many psukim together. And Aleinu has a lot of psukim in it, and so therefore it deserves a Kaddish. Just that we decided to leave that Kaddish for a regular person, okay, who lost a parent, either his father or his mother, because there are lots of little kids that lose parents, okay, and also even older people that they can't lead the congregation themselves, and they should say Kaddish and Baruch Hu at the outset, at the beginning of Berachas Kriya Shema, because that's really the nachas he does for his parents. Because if he could do that, that's the better thing to do than saying Kaddish. So the reason why we say this is because there is a midrash that brings a story of Rebbe Akiva, that there's a big there's a lot of nachas, there's a lot of positive feelings that come to the spirit of the departed parent when they see their child getting up and saying Kaddish and Baruch Hu, and especially within that first year in which they have passed away. So therefore, they made this prayer specifically for the Yasam, for the person who's lost a parent. And that's why this Kaddish is made special for them. Because there's nothing else that you could leave for them to do it, whether they're children or they're adults. Now, if at the end of this Siman, I'm going to write all the laws in the Biur Halacha relating to Kaddish, and I'm also going to talk about who gets to say what Kaddish. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so that's actually taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. Maybe we'll have to pick up with 133, 134 another time. We'll see. Let's see how we do. I think the other one's actually pretty short. So I'm going to make a separate video that I will post for that Biur Halacha going over those laws, because it's not really in the Mishnah and the Biur Halacha, so I'll make a separate video for that. Okay, so we're saying that a person could go ahead and say Uval Tzion afterwards if there's not some type of not something necessary for them to have to leave shul immediately. Okay, and Pita Makatoris, right? You should say Pita Makatoris. Okay, so meaning that you won't be late for work, because if you're going to be late, then if people don't want you to stay so long, then you should be able to get to work after shul. And it makes sense that as long as someone is there for the Kaddish after Aleinu, this is meant for the person whose parent has departed. But if that person could lead the Tzibur, or at least say Baruch Hu for everybody, people shouldn't worry about who gets to say that Kaddish after Aleinu. Okay, and then we say that saying the incense afterwards is a good idea, because Ketores was offered all day long, which is exactly what it says in the Torah. And we also say Aleinu at the nighttime, okay, which is to say after mincha, and right before it, when the ketores was still being offered at the time. So my minhag is to say the ketores right before mincha. Okay, and so some people, Aleinu was only to say Aleinu after in the morning after Tefilah. So Mishmur asked the question, I don't understand. So why do we say Aleinu on Shabbos and Yom Tov after Musaf? It's really connected to Ketores, which is before that. We shouldn't say Aleinu all the way at the end. Okay, and so we should say it before that time. So maybe what's to say is that. So maybe it's just because we're ready to finish off the whole rest of the thing like that. So he says there's actually reasons al pi Kabbalah to say it at the end, and the Shla brings down to also say it there as well because it has some spiritual implications. The minhag is to also say the daily song that was recited by the Leviim. The Magen Avram says that the Ramah is referring to every single day in which the Levium would sing a song, you should say it for that day. So, on that day, on day one, the Levium would say David Mizmor, okay, and you finish that one, and every single day you say the prayer which was attached, you say the psalm that was attached to that day that the Levium would sing. But it's not to say that you should recite the Mishnahs of that. Okay? So that's why we say this Mishnah after Petuma Ketores. But that's what the Ramah was saying, but we added that minhag later on. We also another thing about our custom is to say Petuma Ketores after Shachris. One second. I'm sorry. We only say the song of the Levium after Shachris. Even though in the Mikdash they used to say the songs all day long, okay, even later in the day, at the second half of the day, that's not what our custom is, right? Because many times people, would be busy, especially the Kohanim would be busy, and they would actually bring the final libations in the nighttime, and that wasn't an appropriate time for song. So therefore, our custom is just to say the songs in a day for that same reason. So the times and things we're supposed to say different. We say different psalms on the holidays. Those will be discussed later on in the laws of Yom Tov. So we're worried that you shouldn't say the Pitum HaKetores all week long because the Pitum HaKetores you might skip something. And if you skip something, then it's like skipping an ingredient. So the Beis Yosef thinks this is a bit ridiculous, and it's only when you actually bring it, not when you say it. And so he doesn't agree with this statement over there. Okay, and it's only also a problem if you did it intentionally, not if you were just rushing to say it. But you really should be more careful. Okay, but there are some that still say that you should only say it on Shabbos. Because only say it within the siddur. What he doesn't bring down over here is that a lot of people actually say it only written on cloth. They write it on actual parchment. So that's an interesting other piece of halacha as well, is to recite it off of parchment, because some people hold that reciting it off of printed text is not the proper way to recite it. Okay, and so we say when you leave, you should prostrate yourself and leave. Because in the Mikdash, that's what you would do as well. You would bow as you were leaving. Okay? All right, so that is Kuf Lamed Beis. So here's Kuf Lamed Gimel. Kuf Lamed Gimel is pretty short. Baruch Hu on Shabbos. So, okay, so let's just go through the halacha, and then the Mishnah explains. So saying Baruch Hu on Shabbos is one little halacha here. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, one should not recite Baruch Hu after the final Kaddish. Okay, we'll talk about why we're saying Baruch Hu at that point. Usually Baruch Hu goes before Shema, but we're reciting it here. So Ramah says, so even in a place where they have the custom to say it during the week, for certain people who didn't make it to shul on time, okay, they would recite Baruch Hu for them. Nonetheless, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you don't say it because everyone has been to shul, has gotten to shul at least by the time that the rest of the shul has said Baruch Hu at some other point. Okay, so the Mishnah explains. Okay, so there are certain places where the custom was to say Kaddish and Baruch Hu after you finish Tefilah, after you finish the entire prayer service, when everyone's still together in the congregation, because some people got there too late and they missed Baruch Hu and they didn't hear it. Okay, so we learned earlier in Siman Samech Tes 69 about what the rules are for that. Okay, so we said about they come in later and who recites it and when they recite it. So just quickly, you should know that the custom is basically that you wait until after the Kaddish before Aleinu to recite Baruch Hu, because now you've done all of Shachris and you said the Kaddish, the final Kaddish that closes off the Shachris section, and then you can repeat Baruch Hu at that point, and then those people can go ahead and start reciting the Berachos of Shema, or if they said them already, they miss Baruch Hu, they recite at that point. Okay. On Shabbos Yom Tov, no one comes so late. Why? Because the Mishnah says, because even if it should happen that you should come really late, you're definitely going to hear Baruch Hu from the reading of the Torah. So you're never going to come so late. Some people say that even during the week, you might say the same thing by the Kriya on Monday and Wednesday, on Monday and Thursday, but that's not the case. All right, Kuf Lamed Daled. Now, so Kuf Lamed Daled is where we actually start off the laws of Kriyas Torah. This is where the laws of Torah begin. So we're going to go through it really quickly over here, because really the laws of Kriyas Torah start in Kuf Lamed Hey, which is the laws of Kriyas Torah. But here there's an interesting couple of laws about different customs about how you transition in Shacharis to Torah reading before you finish Shacharis. Okay, so this is really shaykh to the laws of Tefilah, and we'll see why. So the Ramah says immediately that in reciting the Hu Rachum and the lifting of the Torah, the Ramah says immediately that our custom is to say more Tachanun on the second and fifth day, okay? And we say V'hu Rachum, okay, and recite it, and the Shulchan Aruch starts, and he says V'hu Rachum should be recited out loud, and if you don't say it standing, you are violating an enactment, and you are considered someone who is porei sketer. You're breaking a fence. All right. So there's a rabbinic enactment to stand for this. So V'hu Rachum is really part of Tachanun over here, but the Sephardic custom is a little bit different, which we'll get into in a second. Okay. Now the Ramah then says, okay, we also say it standing, but we say it quietly. Okay. And what they say by adding Tachanunim on the second and the fifth is because those are the days where the judgment is more apt to be heard. And so therefore we have that custom to those days to also enact the fasts. Okay, there's a fast called Sheni V'Chamishi. Now let's talk about the law of the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so we add more places. Okay, and the Mishnah says, oh, and you know what they also do on those days too? They also add the Yud Gimel Midos. They also add the 13 attributes of God, where we do a vidui, we do a confessional. Okay, so some people add that custom as well. So people of the Sfar tend to do that. And then saying V'hu Rachum, this was enacted, the Mishnah explains, because of a great miracle that occurred that was mentioned in the Kol Bowl. Okay, and so therefore, because of something that happened to the people of Ashkenaz and Sfard, therefore we added these prayers asking for forgiveness. Okay, and if you skip it, you're violating a rabbinic enactment. So some people say that the Mishnah says that you're not really a porei sketer unless you skip the whole thing. But if you say part of it, or if you're sitting for it, that's a problem unless you need to sit. Okay, and then we say you should stand. And also the El Erech HaPayim prayer that is after the Chatzi Kaddish, when you finish Tachanun and right before Torah service, that should be recited standing as well, because we say Chatanu, right? We have sinned. We also make confessions in there, so those things shall be said while standing. The Ramah says our customs say it quietly, okay, because it's supposed to be like an extension of Shemona Esrei, and that was recited silently. And the reason why the first opinion says it loudly is because it's supposed to be recalling the sense of it should be arousing our intention to pay attention more, and each place has different customs, so follow the one that's in your community. Now some people say that when you finish V'hu Rachum and you finish it before the Shliach Tzibor gets, you should wait to start Tachanun with the Shliach Tzibor, okay, and then everyone goes on their face all together. And the Shari Tshuva writes that nowadays that most people don't wait. And everyone just does their own thing, and that's what we do, all right? But it's preferable to wait for them. Okay, and why do we say it on the second and the fifth day? The Ramah says because those are days of increased kindness, because the 40 days when we accepted the luchos, right? When we accepted the 10 commandments written on the tablets, those came to the second one came to us at the end of 40 days, and those were that was on the fifth day that he received it, and on the second day he came down from the mountain. And the Ramah says that's why we also fast. And so we're going to learn about that in Siman Tuf Kuf Pei, okay, 580, and we'll talk more about it there. Okay, so one thing this is the minhag of Sfardim we're going to get to right now. So the next thing you do at the end of Tachanun is you show the writing of the Sefer Torah to everyone standing there in the congregation. So you've taken it out. Okay, so you turn to the right and you turn to the left, and then bring it back in front of you, and then turn it all around, because the mitzvah is to show all the men and women the writing of the Sefer Torah, and they should all lean forward and they should say V'zos HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe. Right, this is the Torah that Moshe placed before us. They should also say Torah Hashem Tamima. They should all recite that. Okay, and the Ramah adds, our custom is to do this after reading the Torah. But when we take it out, the Shat says, the Shliach Tzibur person leading should say, Gadlu la Hashem iti, right? He lifts the Torah up and he goes, this is the Torah, okay? And the congregation then says, Romamu, that's what our custom is. And then they recite Av HaRachamim, that paragraph. And then some people say that you should say the paragraph that starts with Al HaKol Yiskadel, okay? And that's what we say that paragraph on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And you should hold the Sefer Torah on your right side. And when the first person comes up to read the Torah, he should say, Baruch Shnasan Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'Kedusha Sam. And that's recited by the Gabbai. All right, so the Mishnah Berurah explains. So I show the congregation the writing. The Mechaber holds that this is written before Kriyas Torah, because that was the minhag of the Sfardim, to pick up the Torah before the reading. And we're going to talk about this later on when we talk about the Ashkenazic custom by the Ramah, okay? Because we do it after the reading. Someone picks the Sefer Torah from off of the bima to show everybody, okay? They should roll it to at least 3 columns wide and lift it up. And it seems that there's a reason why they pick exactly 3. But really, this feels more like it might be based on the strength of the person picking it up, that it should be within his ability to pick it up, and it not be unrolled significantly. Okay, and then we show the writing of the Torah to everybody. So the poskim write that when you show the Sefer Torah writing to everybody, and you are standing on the eastern side of the table where you were reading, you should turn to the east first. Okay. From the east to the south, okay. We talked about this when we talked about turning your face for the priestly blessing, just like the Kohanim, okay. And then they say Kaddish, okay, like Chatzi Kaddish, okay. Before you take out the Sefer Torah, but on when there's Musaf, you say the full Kaddish before taking out the Sefer Torah. Okay, and then we say that there's a mitzvah to, what is this? Oh, it's a mitzvah to show everybody standing there the writing, okay, of the Sefer Torah. And that's even people who were standing outside, they should come inside to see the Sefer Torah. So Hag was a big deal, so don't miss it, okay? And everyone should look at the writing on the inside of it, and really someone should be able to look close enough that they could actually see the letters themselves until they could read them. And this is how the light of the Torah shines into a person. And you also say, the Ramah says, you say V'zos HaTorah, but don't say V'zos Torah against the writing itself, okay? So it's the whole thing. And the Shliach Tzibur says Gadlu, okay? And the minhag of the world, okay, is to say Barich Shemei after that, right before that, before you take it out. whether it's during the week or on Shabbos. And if you don't say it, you can say it afterwards until you close the Aron itself. And you should lift the Torah 3 times. So you should say it when you say Shema, Echad Elokeinu, and Gadlu, right? So you should be holding it in 2 hands, then lifting it slightly, okay? And you should hold the Sefer Torah on your right side. Why? Because the verse says, Vimino Techabekeni. My right side has caressed it. And also the Torah is given with the right hand. God writes it with his right hand. On Shabbos and Shacharis, when we bring the Sefer Torah back to the Aron, we say Mizmor Havu L'Shem B'nei Elim. All right, but during the week we say something else. And on Mincha on Shabbos and on Yom Tov we say that as well. And during the week we say the 24th Psalm. And then right before the first guy comes up, we say Baruch Shenasan Torah L'Imo Yisrael. And afterwards, the Mishnah brings down the custom to say Hakel Tamim. Why? Because there's 40 letters in that. Okay, but I've never seen anybody who actually who has that custom. Alrighty, so we got through all of that. We'll pick up with the laws of reading the Torah next time. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining, and we will see you next time.